Let's start with a story based around business and strategy. And let's look at Groupon. And Groupon very simply has made a living as a site with deals, like a lot of sites like this, of putting businesses together with customers through deals. But in this article, which is by Josh Cabone on Mashable, he talks about why Groupon must change their long-term strategy to succeed in their business model. So let's talk about this in general.
Well, what's interesting about it is, Groupon's been getting a lot of good press, bad press, going to file, not going to file, everything that go with it. And everyone's been taking a very high-level look at Groupon and talking about it in very simple terms. What I liked about this article was that it really dug deep into the concept of where's Groupon going and does it have a long-term strategy that's successful based on A, the market and sort of where the economy is going, and B, sort of what its focus is, because to your point, their focus is deal-centric and sort of focused on a customer acquisition. And in particular, he says in here, more than decreasing customer acquisition costs, Groupon needs to find a way to add value to merchants to keep them offering more deals. So as you think about that, it's a big shift for them if they're willing to make it.
Well, again, we're talking about strategy here. And so when we look at and the basis of the article, they have to change their for their long-term strategy and their business model, according to Josh Cabone in this article. But when we look at it, it's interesting because it's the classic debate of customer acquisition versus customer retention. What type of customers are you getting? So the argument in this article is, whether you're a mom and pop store or whether you're a big chain, that all the statistics tell us that the customers you're getting are not as likely to come back when they're deal customers.
And I am, sort of the question from a strategy point of view is, I am who I am, and so do I stay with who I am, or do I change my model? And so do I start to shift my business? So you're right. I mean, the question here is, and the article talks about, are they going to come back? Can I hold on to the customer? And what he's postulating is this idea that Groupon needs to make a shift. But think about this. You spent all these years building this mega corporation. You're about to go public, and all of a sudden they ask the question of, should you change? And can you as a CEO make that decision? Change my business model right before I go public? What are you talking about? And yet maybe that's the answer. And he postulates that small businesses will cut back and all of a sudden Groupon will have an issue. On this stage we've talked about, if you want to, you need to be something that has more of a pull to it, something where customers are more loyal to you, either because you're content centric, or in this, what he's arguing is because you have a different value proposition. But the question really from a strategy point of view is, can you make that fundamental shift? Are you willing to risk and sort of move that ship while it's moving in a certain direction?
Well, again, while we're looking at this article, let me ask you a more specific question. Should you make that shift? So, for example, they cite a Rice University study, and there's two very interesting stats that I got out of it. And they surveyed, by the way, 5 deal companies like Groupon that are out there, including Groupon. 48% of the businesses that use deal companies like Groupon would do it again. That's one stat that's interesting. So it is. So there's an answer that you shouldn't look at, or maybe you shouldn't.
You stay where you are because
it's right in the middle.
We're kicking butt.
It's right in the middle, so you can make that argument either way. But here's another one. 1 in 5 consumers, only 1 in 5 consumers become repeat customers. So only 20% of your customers are becoming repeat customers. And again, in this survey from Rice University with 5 different deal-making companies.
And so think about the value proposition of, I'm bringing you more customers. The first time out, you'll lose money on them, but they'll stay with you and you'll make more money.
Only 20% are staying.
And all of a sudden, are they, so now if you do the math, does it really work for you? Are you getting the customer you want, and are you getting them the way you want? And they go through a lot of different sort of stories about companies that say, well, maybe I'm not, all of a sudden you hand them the offer and they say, oh my goodness, and all that goes with it. But the interesting question to you is, should they change? And, should you, so two questions to that. A, sort of as you're sitting at the top of that ship and as you're sort of getting to that edge, should you make the move? I would say in the case of Groupon, they have to, because, if you look at the street and you look for, we talk about this all the time, long-term recurring revenue. That's what people look for, long-term recurring revenue, locked-in recurring revenue. Those are the methodologies you're trying to get to. Groupon doesn't have that right now because they're deal-specific and they're sort of deal-to-deal, and they're also potentially economy-specific. So what this is saying, and I do agree with them, is if they can find a strategy that gets them locked-in recurring revenue, long-term recurring revenue, locked-in customer base and loyal customer base, and vendors that want to keep coming back because that customer is not the 20%, but the more value proposition, that's where they win.